Hey everyone, welcome to the Decorative Den, a look inside my craft room where I share all things crafting, planning, and cross stitch. My name is Charity and I am so happy to have you here with me today for a craft tutorial. So today I'm going to share with you how I turn these plastic eggs into adorable little acorns to decorate my home with. Now I absolutely love these and will have them out in my home all year long, probably. But I recognize most people associate acorns with fall and include them in their autumn decorating. And so I still wanted to get this video out now because the stores are just packed with these plastic Easter eggs. So pick up a pack now, save this tutorial, and then that way you have it for when you want to make these. But enough gabbing. If you want to see the process, then just keep watching. All right, so today I'm going to show you two different versions of these acorns, and the first one we're going to make is this acorn with the cord cap. Now for this acorn, you're going to need your plastic Easter eggs, and you can really use any size, some hot glue, a paintbrush, some Mod Podge, and it can be any finish, whatever your preferred one is. I'm using matte. Some kind of paper to cover the egg in. I would recommend a thin paper like a tissue paper or a decorative napkin. I am using brown craft paper because that's what I had on hand. And then some kind of cord. I am using this dark brown jute cord that I got from Michael's, a pair of scissors, and not pictured here, but you will also need some small sticks. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take my brown craft paper and tear it into small pieces. And I'm really not concerned about making these similar in size or shape. I think the more variation you have, the cooler the acorn looks in the end. Now, once I'm done with that, I'm going to take my Mod Podge and with my paintbrush, add a thin layer to the outside of the plastic egg. And then I'm going to layer a piece of my torn paper on top of the glue and then cover that with another layer of glue. So really, this is like a simple decoupage technique, and the goal is to cover the entire Easter egg in the paper of your choice. So I'm covering mine in my brown craft paper. And I do really like how the brown craft paper looks on the finished product. However, this paper was a little thick, and so at times it was really difficult to get it to stay in place, especially because the outside of these plastic Easter eggs are so just slick and smooth. There's really nothing for the paper and glue to grab onto at first. And so you might find when you're putting kind of your first few pieces down that they sort of slide all over on the plastic. But just keep adding paper. It eventually gets easier and easier as the paper overlaps itself. And you really just want to do your best to overlap each piece and cover the entire Easter egg. Now, if you're using a thin paper like a tissue paper or even a decorative napkin, you might end up deciding to paint your Easter egg before adding the paper, especially if your eggs are a bright color. Or to avoid that, I would just recommend picking a plastic Easter egg that is either a very neutral color or a color similar in tone to the paper that you're going to be covering your egg with. And you're just going to continue that process, covering the entire egg. I did find that it was helpful to do like a little bit over half of my egg, and then I just set it on this old paint tray that I had and let it dry before I finished covering the other half. So now that my egg is completely covered, I'm going to start making my acorn cap. So this is a really simple process. I'm just going to take the end of my cord and secure it to the egg using some hot glue. And then I'm simply going to just wrap it around the rounder part of the egg. So this would be like the base or the bottom of the plastic Easter egg if you were, displaying it as an actual egg. And I'm just going to continue that process of covering the entire egg. And I think the key here is leave your cord on the spool. Don't cut off a piece because you don't necessarily know how much or how little you'll need. And so I leave my cord attached to the spool until I know that I am finished with the cord and it is covered the portion of the egg that I need it to. Now, I thought my cord was a little bit thin, and so I decided to go back and just repeat the process a second time, doing the exact same thing, securing the end of my cord with some hot glue, wrapping it around the egg, creating my acorn cap, and then just every so often adding a little more hot glue to make sure that everything was going to stay in place. That's probably unnecessary if you're using a really thick cord or if you just like the look of your egg with one wrapping. But like I said, my cord was pretty thin, and so I just wanted my acorn cap to be a little thicker and to stand out a little more. And so I'm going to finish that off by cutting the cord and adding a dab of hot glue at the top to secure my little stick with. Then I go through and I just like to clean it up with my scissors, cutting off any of those hot glue strings, and this one is done. So moving on to the second acorn I'm going to show you, and that is an acorn cap made from pinecone pieces. Now you're going to need all of the same supplies except for the jute cord. Instead of cording, we're going to need some pine cones and some needle nose pliers. So I'm going to take my pine cone and my needle nose pliers and essentially just pull off all of the scales on this pine cone. And if you have a strong pair of scissors, you might be able to just cut the scales off the pine cone, which definitely would be easier. But I don't really have a pair of scissors that can do that. And so I found the easiest way for me to remove these scales is to take my needle nose pliers and grab the base of each scale, rocking it back and forth until it breaks off of the pine cone. Some of them do break off, like too small and jagged to use, but most have a pretty clean break and are substantial enough to use for this project. So I just go through and do that to multiple pine cones until I have enough scales to cover the cap part of my acorn. And the number of pine cones that you need will really depend on the size of the Easter egg you're using and how successful you are at breaking the scales off without totally like crumpling them or making them too short to use. I used a larger plastic Easter egg for this acorn, and I think I needed 3 or 3.5 pine cones to cover the egg and create my cap. I had quite a few scales that broke off and were unusable. And so I think if you're able to use a pair of scissors and get some clean cuts, you may be able to get away with needing fewer pine cones. So I'm just going to add each of my pine cone scales individually to the Easter egg with a dab of hot glue, making a ring around the entire egg. And once I have created that ring, I like to go in with a pair of scissors and just trim off any jagged edges that are sticking out, because trimming those will make it easier to add my next layer of pinecone scales. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Again, with a dab of hot glue, I'm going to secure each scale individually, creating another ring around the egg and the next layer of my acorn cap. The most important piece of this is making sure your ring of scales is always overlapping the previous ring. That will give this a nice layered look and a more finished look because you won't see any of those jagged edges. So I'm just going to continue that process, working all the way around the egg, creating a full cap. And when I get to the top there, I'm going to add one more dab of hot glue and add a small stick, just like I did for the cord acorn cap. And that's it, you guys. Here are the finished acorns. I think they came out so cute, and I just love acorns in general, so I 100% will use these in my everyday decor. I think it's always fun when you can upcycle like a simple, common object and turn it into something really unique and fun for your home. But that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you are well, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.